Yes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Tales from the Inside. And now, please welcome your host, Miss Angela Sawyer.
Hi, everyone. How you doing? Thanks for being here. Welcome to Tales from the Inside. So this is a storytelling show that we've been doing every week since the start of quarantine, and I run it, so it's a wild, chaotic ride, and we have a good time. This used to be a show that happened in my living room of my house, and it used to be once a month. And basically, it's a chance for people to really think while they're performing and be the people that they already are, and just sort of like as performers, you get a lot of chances to think about what you're going to say ahead of time and plan it all out. And some people use cards and write it all down and stuff like that, and you make your little gestures at the right time. And sometimes it gets to be almost like this thing where you're acting, except the person that you're playing is yourself, which is fine, except that then you forget what it feels like to just be talking to people and not know what you're going to say next. And I really like that feeling, and I like it when I can see it happening to other people. And I feel like you get to know people really well when that happens. So this is a show just to do that. And I'm going to start us off. We've got some amazing performers here, and we might actually even add one because I just got a message from somebody who I forgot. And we'll see if I can sneak them in. I'm going to try and sneak them in. So um, I'm going to get started, and I want to talk to you tonight about playground equipment, which sounds very boring. I know. Here's the thing. These days, I only got my first real, like, normal person job. I worked as a secretary, very normal. And I got my first normal job at age 48. Before that, I always worked in record stores and dealt with people who refused to become adults, which is fine. I was one of those people also. So you can tell by my sense of decor, I haven't quite figured it out. So, uh, but I realized as I started working for these people who make playground equipment, how much that has changed and how it reflects the way we treat children and adults and the line between them. Um, I know you guys probably know this, but before the end of World War II, the toys that we gave for children were just like bricks and clumps of yarn. Like, we didn't help them a whole lot. And even going into the 60s and the 70s, a lot of, like, we finally got swings at some point, and then eventually, as the 70s came along, they invented monkey bars and things like that. But these days, the playgrounds that they make for kids are like ultra design and meant to be very universal, no matter what kind of kid is on them. And they're meant to help you develop and all this stuff. And it's very different from where I grew up. I am old, I'm 50 years old. So I was a kid using playground equipment in the 1970s. And at that time, the best way that you could parent and show that you loved a child was to never speak to them and just throw them out of your house whenever the sun was out. Uh, it was considered very healthy to let the sun guide them. So, and it was considered very natural to just kind of let them figure their way through the world. That was supposed to be super healthy. So, the elementary school that I went to, a lot of our playground equipment was leftovers from when they were building a highway. There were like these giant concrete circles, like what you would put a ton of sewage through. and they put those next to a school, and then just threw a bunch of small rocks on the ground next to them. Most, some like pebble sized and shale and so on, and then some just like regular sized rocks that they threw on as decor, so you could trip over those on your way to the concrete circles. So it was not exactly a friendly environment. It was very injury prone. And one of our performers is a kindergarten teacher. So she was just telling me actually that kids get injured constantly. And I'm glad to know that that's still true, because all I remember from being a child is having all of my peers have terrible injuries all the time. There was always a kid like falling off a slide onto their head, or just like snapping some bone in four or five places or some such thing. So while I was at elementary school, when I was in sixth grade, we had a teacher named Mr. Brotherton, which I know sounds like he carried an acoustic guitar and tried to get us to join the priesthood, but it's just a regular guy, I promise. It was just his real name. I don't know where he got it. But he was my sixth grade teacher. And when I was in sixth grade, they installed new fancy playground equipment at my school. And what they did was they took two teeter-totters, two seesaws, and attached them together the long way, which I'm sure if you think about it for just a second, that is not a functional teeter-totter. That's not like how they would ever work well. What that is basically they built a catapult for small children to throw them onto pavement. And they built this contraption, whatever it was called, the two teeter-totters stuck together the long way. They built it out of like trees with just the branches taken off, like logs with bark on it. So they were not particularly comfortable to sit on. And then you guys know how when you drive along the highway, sometimes you'll see those concrete highway barriers, and there are big like sticks coming out of them with screw ends on them. They look like flower stems coming out of the highway barriers. They stuck those into the bark as handles. So you could get rust inside your hands and get your legs completely shown off with bark. And then anytime we were children. So like anytime someone went to use this thing, somebody else would come up behind them and just like hit the end of the teeter-totter, and whoever that was would just go flying. And that was what we considered good entertainment. So when I was in sixth grade, Mr. Brotherton, who was a great teacher, a very nice human being who was probably like 25, but in my head, he will forever be ancient. He did a really nice thing. He wanted our sixth grade class to like get involved with contemporary technology. But of course, it was like 1979. So contemporary technology meant camcorders about the size of the room that I'm in now. And he went out, I'm sure on his own dime, and bought 6 or 7 of these camcorders that were super huge and that were so big that a child couldn't carry them by themselves. And he gave them to our class to use. He put us into little groups because he couldn't afford enough camcorders to go around for everybody. And then had us all for a whole year just figure out how to make a movie by playing with these camcorders. I was very excited about it, and in our little group of 2 or 3 people, I was super proud because I convinced everybody that we should film the movie that I made up, which was a stop motion movie. Like it was a checkerboard with clay figures that would like grow out of the pieces and then fight each other. The unfortunate thing was I was super like, Daryl Hall and the president are going to come to my house and give me awards and like take me away on a white horse to live forever in fairyland because this is such a good idea that's nothing else could happen, And unfortunately, we didn't know how to make stop motion movies at all. So what we ended up making was a 10-minute shot of one lump of Play-Doh on a checkerboard, just like melting very, very slowly. We made an excellent like Andy Warhol avant-garde film. Perfectly, really nice, would do well to this day. But it was not something that other 6th graders wanted to watch. So we all worked all year on these films. And Mr. Brotherton made one as well. And the idea was at the end of the year, we would show everybody's films for the first time. And we'd finally get to see what we made and what everybody else made. And then Mr. Brotherton would show his film as like a big surprise, thank you, whatever. Mr. Brotherton decided we saw everybody's film. Most people made shots of themselves like playing cowboys and Indians or whatever. And then we saw the avant-garde film of Play-Doh melting on a checkerboard, and everybody's like, wow, whoever did this is an idiot. And then finally, we did Miss Brotherton's film, and his idea was he was going to make a film and show it in the same day. That was his big thing. So he was going to make the film during recess on the day of the big presentation and then show it that day. And his idea for a film was to have each of the kids in the class, so like 30 different kids, walk across the terrible teeter-totter log thing towards the camera. And what he did not realize was that he asked them to basically be Indiana Jones in a movie where all the booby traps in the world were against them. So we started, and one kid walked and fell off, and another kid walked and got a little further, fell off. Another kid got to the first like dip where the logs moved and broke her arm like perpendicular right through the just 90-degree angle. Ambulance came, had to be hauled away. And Mr. Brotherton was like, okay, I got to finish this movie. Let's get some more kids. And so at the end of our sixth grade presentation, we had this movie of just kids like injured. And it was, I think it prepped me for watching football later, pretty much. And that is the story of why it's so nice that we design playground equipment now. So I'm very excited for your performance tonight. I've got some amazing people here. I'm going to try and get one extra squished in. We'll see if I can get it done. So right now, I'm so excited. Your first performer, she does stuff all over Connecticut. She's a kindergarten teacher. She's super lovely. I got to do, before we all went inside for forever, I got to do a festival in Worcester with her, and I love watching her do comedy. She's so funny. So please put your hands together right now, Patricia D'Onofrio.
Oh.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm going to tell you guys a pretty wild story. It's the story of karma. So I'll just set the table with that one. So when I was 17, I had my license and I was driving in my car. I had recently got my full-on license, so I wasn't a permit anymore, it was a real license. And I was really excited because I was at that point where my parents would let me take the car to places, which is very freeing and very exciting time in life. And I was going from one graduation party to another. And I stopped home to change my clothes because it had gotten cold. So I stopped home, changed my clothes, then I hopped back in my car. As I left my neighborhood, there's this big intersection that has a very shady area to it. It sort of looks like a T shape. And on the long side of the T, it's all shadowy, like full of trees. And at this time of day, it's very difficult to see things that are dark there. It was about 5 o'clock. So like the sun was starting to set, but it was very shadowy. Anyways, as a new driver, I was very cautiously checking left and right, left and right, left and right, left and right, probably like at least 10 times, because when you're 17, you do that. You don't want to mess this up. You finally got your freedom. This is not the time to mess it up. So I looked and looked and looked and looked, and I saw nobody coming. So I said, okay, I'm going to take this turn. I take a turn, and all of a sudden behind me, I hear lots of horn honking, constant, for at least like a full minute of somebody just blaring on their horn. And I looked in my rearview mirror and I saw a man and a woman, and they were enraged, and they had some big body language, as you can imagine. So a lot of this and a lot of that and a lot of, and the faces weren't nice. But I was like, okay, I guess I didn't see those people. So I need to be more careful, but I'm just going to keep going. So I go. And then I realized these people are right behind me, and they're going fast, and they're still beeping, and they're still yelling and probably swearing at me. So I turn into a little cul-de-sac, and I'm like, all right, I'm just going to go over here, and they're going to leave me alone, probably. And that's not what happened. What happened was they came as well. So I was like, oh my God, this might be their neighborhood. What have I done? So I wasn't very good at K-turns at this point in my driving career. So I turned into a driveway to back out because that was how I felt most confident. And this was a great moment where I watched these people in my rearview mirror block me in to a random person's driveway and park. So sat there for a minute like, what's about to happen right now? And I waited, and a woman got out, a mom, and she got out and she banged on my window. So I rolled it down because I'm a coward. And she starts going off and she's saying, I'm a mama bear. I have my children in the car. You almost killed us. Like, really enraged. But I will say, like, I looked a million times. This means they were definitely speeding. Okay. It's not my fault you're speeding. But anyways, I have no courage. I'm 17 years old. I'm shaking like a leaf. I'm gonna. I didn't mean to do that. Which really sounds confident, you know. Really putting on a show here of confidence. So I'm just like shaking like a leaf, and finally the reaming out ends and she gets back in her car and I'm like, okay, that really sucked, but I'm surviving. And then her husband comes out and I'm like, fuck, there's a part 2 to this opera. So he like bangs the window and he's like, he seems more apologetic. Like, he doesn't seem as hysterical. He seems more like level, but he's like, but his words seemed more insane. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, this seems like a rational person. And then I was like, oh, he's not rational at all. These people are nuts. So he comes over and he has a notepad, which is a bad sign. If someone has a notepad, you need to like walk away, like literally leave your car and go go to someone's house, like leave. So he gets his notepad out and his little pen, and he tells me he wants to know who's responsible for this. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, I need to know who's responsible. I'd like your name and your phone number. And I was like, what do you mean? There hasn't been an accident. What is going on here? But I was afraid of him. And I was also 17 and an idiot. So I gave him my name. I gave him a fake name because I'm smart, kind of. At this point, I have some common sense in my life, in my head. So I give him a fake name, but I give him a real number because I'm like, I want to know if this psycho goes farther, you know? And here's the weirdest part. He insisted upon giving me his name and his phone number as if I'm going to be chatting him up. Freak. So anyway, he tells me his name. I'm going to tell you guys his real name. Are you ready? Because like, this guy's horrible. So like, I don't really care if this wrecks his social life. His name is Daryl Ponzio. Okay. Do with that what you will. But anyways, he goes, okay, my name's Daryl Ponzio. Here's my phone number. So I write it down and I'm just like terrified. I'm just like, okay, I guess I'm going to take this guy's number. So they leave and I like cried for a minute and like calmed myself down. And then I went to like a bonfire and like got drunk with my 17-year-old friend. So it's like, you know, no sweat off my back, but it was scary. Like, it was my first interaction that like people in the world can be unhinged and they can try to do things to you about it, you know? So that was intense. And I really didn't think about these people much after that. I just was like, those people are nuts. And like next time I need to just stand my ground and not roll the window down or just call the police and be like, you're harassing me, you know? So I sort of like learned, I was like, okay, like honestly, these people are assholes because they were speeding and putting their children's life in risk. And like, instead of owning it, they're blaming a 17-year-old. Like, these people are not well. So life goes on. And a couple years later, I am nannying for a family. And the family lives right by the fire station in our neighborhood. And the mom was like, hey, do you want to bring the kids over to the fire station? Usually there's some volunteers there who will like let us in, and like sometimes will like let us like, you know, like look at the fire trucks, and like sometimes they let you like sit in there and stuff. And, you know, at a volunteer fire department, sometimes they're just like hanging out, you know, like there's not always a fire. Sorry, but there just isn't always a fire. You know, sometimes they're just chilling. So we go there, and of course there's like one or two firefighters that are just chilling. And I have the kids, and I have 3 children with me, and they're in a wagon. They're young enough to be in wagons. So that tells you what size they are. They're little at this point. And they're thrilled about fire trucks. Like, they talk about them all the time, and they're like, oh my gosh, we got to be in a fire truck. Like, they're thrilled. And this man comes over, and, you know, he's super friendly. He's like, hey, like, do the kids want to look at the trucks? And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. Like, that sounds awesome. So we're looking around at the trucks, and the kids ask if like they can sit in one. And the fireman says, yeah, sure. That's really cool. So he opens the door, and he's like gently helping like lift the kids up into like the big seats and stuff. And it's like a really nice moment until I catch a look at his sweater, and it says Ponzio. And my heart started racing. You never seen a woman pick up 3 children and put them in a wagon so quick. Okay. I'm whipping out of that parking lot with these wagon children. I'm like, we gotta get out of here. And that was him. That was him. And he didn't recognize me, but I recognized him. And like, at first it wasn't familiar to me, but I saw it stitched on his sweater, Ponzio, and I was like, oh my God. And then shortly after, you want to hear like a great little karmic moment at the end. I also was working at like a before and after school program at the school, and turns out that his children went there. So I was like taking care of his kids, and he didn't recognize me. I recognized him though. After that fire station thing, I was like, this guy's a nut job. And they ended up getting kicked out of the program for being like not paying their bills and being like really impolite to the people who work there. They were like, yeah, you can't send your kids here anymore. So that's my story.
Guys, give it up for Trisha D'Onofrio. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that guy's name. It just sounds like someone who would sell shampoo out of the back of his trunk.
Do you remember the fake name that you gave him?
Oh, what? You're muted, Trisha.
I'm sure it was something like Tammy. Like, I'm sure it wasn't like that off, you know, it was probably pretty close to Trisha, but I was like, this will really throw him.
I doubt that there are any actual young people or teenagers watching our show, but if there are, or if you show it to one, if you ever are going to be in a situation where you have to give a fake name, it's a good idea to practice first. You want to practice, you want to have one like locked in the back of your brain that you can pull out, because otherwise you will say the name of a singer. I promise you. That is what I did. So I called up a radio station when I was like 8 years old and asked them to play a request. And they were like, who's this request for? What's your name? And I was like, it's Tammy Wynette. And they were like, okay, Tammy. And I felt real dumb. So make sure you have your fake name ready to go, whatever it is. It can't be like you can't choose Daryl Ponzio because that's too much. You have to get one that is fake, but not too fake. It's a very thin line. So just advice for your life. Okay, our next performer, I'm so excited to have her. I have been wanting to have her on the show for forever. She is literally for like 3 or 4 years. She is a super important part of Improv Boston and now runs her own storytelling show on Twitch on 2MB Studios. It's really cool. It's called Tall Tale Short Tale. She's so charming, and I'm just super psyched that we finally got her here. So please give it up right now for Isabella O'Connell.
Yay, thank you for having me, Angela. It's true what she says. It's literally been like 3 years of Facebook messaging, so I'm really glad to be here. So to give you the background of the story, I am like living the life of Good Will Hunting. Not at all in the sense that like I'm super smart, and not because I have awesome like vintage men's jackets, but because I work at Harvard and go to Bunker Hill. So in like I'm not Good Will Hunting in the sense that I like have no family. I'm not going that far. Like I had a great background, but I feel more comfortable claiming it knowing that the guys who wrote that character went to like high school in Cambridge. And that always really sticks with me because my cousin was like in the same grade as them. And I live right by like Cambridge High now, so I think about it. But she was in the same grade as them. And my cousin, as a storyteller, as a purveyor of information, she has told me that she's been struck by lightning like 5 times. And I don't mean like 5 different times she said it was for the first time. Like she's aware that she told me before. It's a whole series of experiences. So she told me that she was like a few years after high school graduation, like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon went out into the world and started trying to make it. And she was like working at some bar in New Hampshire. And one of them came in and was saying that he was struggling in his career. And she like gave him advice that made him go on. So I like 0% believe that happened, but it makes me feel comfortable, claiming the Good Will Hunting status despite my relative privilege. I grew up kind of near, like on the Orange Line, so I would go by Bunker Hill Community College, which is where Robin Williams is the therapist in Good Will Hunting. Bunker Hill, like you can pass it so many times and not understand the layout because it looks like a building on like an open lawn estate. But if you try to like, oh, I'm going to open this door and walk across the lawn to that other door, it's like the Truman Show. It's the end of a set. Like, it's like you being in like Tony Hawk 1998, where you're trying to go skate in a backyard and instead your like character just hits a wall and you can't move. So the amount of times I've been trapped at that relatively simple looking campus would astound you. But the reason I actually ended up going to Bunker Hill is that I didn't go to college. When I first graduated from high school, I started working in daycares and preschools. And then after a couple years, I was given the chance to go to Bunker Hill for free through a program for childcare workers. So like childcare totally worked out for me in that sense. Like doing the anti-academic thing made sense, but caring about your job makes it so much harder. And that was an experience I had in childcare. Like you see people talk a lot now about co-parenting, it's not like, oh, I have a kid with some woman, it's co-parenting. And co-parenting is hard for people that like loved each other, or like people that were married and wanted to have a kid. And when you work in a daycare, you're co-parenting with like someone you haven't even had like a grope in a nightclub with. Like there's no affection necessary before you start making split-second decisions about like your values, like what the next generation should believe. So I was doing that, having a good time, but kind of struggling with like dealing with coworkers. And then this is a very, very fresh recent story. Um, when the pandemic happened, I had like this childcare day job, and then I also had like my fun night job in comedy. But I lost both of them because of the pandemic. And when turning to nannying, instead of turning to like, it was this option I knew about that I hadn't really wanted. Um, but it like boomed. Like the nanny economy is like, it's the thing. You can make more money. There's weird, like new lingo that kind of defines jobs that already existed in a way that you could monetize, like pod. Like a pod is just like watching like more than one kid, but it's a pod and you have the background. And I had the background. So this brings me to my goodwill status. I like finally was like feeling like being a nanny was going to be a chance for me to like make my own path. I started thinking more about wanting to have um like a home daycare. And then like when I lost my jobs, I was interviewing families and kind of being my own business. And when I met family that I liked, I wrote up a contract with them. So like I was feeling super equipped and like I was moving into this new independent kind of space with how I was going to operate. So I started at Harvard with these two babies, and this is in September. They were awesome. I mean, pandemic aside, like I managed to get my background check through. I was still waiting on my Harvard ID for a couple weeks, but I had started working with these kids, and it was good. But like, probably by the second Wednesday of this job, I I left these people's apartment like a mess. Like I had slept enough the night before, but a doctor would probably tell you that was not the case. I was like had half the face in stroke mode, just exhausted. And this campus that you think Harvard is like a national monument, right? You could like make it out of sugar cubes and paint it red. But the way that the building moves around the courtyard, it's like a horseshoe. So it was actually really confusing too. And on this day that I was so stressed out, I was just like trying to get out, and every door that I would find would open onto one of these little courtyards. Like none of them were bringing me to Mem Drive, where the building is. So I stuck my head out of one of them. There's this tiny courtyard. So like the building is surrounded by this like metal rod gate that like wrought iron, it looks like it was put up like by the Puritans, but it was definitely worked on since then. Like I don't know what kind of stuffed pepper methods, but they carved them out and stuck some magnets in there because those gates are electronic now. And I looked out into the courtyard. I'm thinking, I'm just going to press the button. I know about the button. I know that these aren't just the Puritans gates. They've been stuffed peppered. I'm leaving. So I step out into the courtyard, go over, press the button, pull on the gate. Doesn't always work. Press it again, pull on the gate. The gate was not opening. The gate was doing what you would think it would do, sitting there and being iron. I'm in this tiny courtyard, and like, I know like Bunker Hill is like the Truman Show in the sense that you can walk off the set. But Harvard's like the Truman Show in the sense that there's someone always watching you, right? There's like it's like Disney. There's like a million workers. Like there are landscapers that come and like move a leaf every single day without fail. So I felt so self-conscious, like having the gate not open, just feeling like some guy named Michael was like watching me on the camera. So I'm just like, I'm gonna turn around, going back in. Couldn't get back in. My Harvard ID didn't work yet, so I couldn't tap back into the door, and it had locked behind me. So like so exhausted, so stressed. I was in this tiny mocking courtyard. So I decided to hop the fence. I decided that what I was going to do on Memorial Drive at 4 p.m. in the broad daylight was climb the wrought iron fence. And the fences go straight up. They're not like, what do you call? Like, the urban traditional fence that we know all the words, so I don't have to say it. That type of fence. So it's not like that. There's no footholds. My 3 years of ballet tap combo was like all the footwork training that I had, and I just kind of inched my way up, turned, and I was making it down the front of the fence when my arm got stuck. My arm got stuck on the big thing that I was holding, like the beautiful, Welcome to Narnia metal topper. And I managed to pull down, but then I looked at my arm and it was covered in huge red bruises. And I thought to myself, first I thought, how do you like them apples? Mm-hmm. And then I thought, I'm gonna walk home crying now. And when I watched him cry. And when I got home, I kind of made myself fine. And my girlfriend noticed that I was distraught and asked what was wrong. So I instantly the waterworks. I climbed the fence and I was stuck and my IT didn't work. And they just looked at me and said, "Oh, I thought someone had died," and went back to what they were reading. And in that moment, I realized no one died. This was just kind of a day. But it was a day in the right direction. It was a day towards working under this contract that I made myself. And it was a day no longer of the annoying co-parenting in daycare, but the single parent life. So that's my story.
Give it up for Isabella O'Connell. That was a great story. I'm so glad you made it out. We've all been trapped by Harvard in one way or another around here. So I'm glad you made it over the fence. And I cannot think of both Trisha and Isabella. Any kid would be so lucky to have you guys in their lives. So lucky. So you're doing something right for the world by being around kids who need someone. And they're lucky to have you. Okay, I'm gonna go. Also, I want to tell you about my neighbor. I have been trying to find a way, a place to insult my neighbor for so long. Okay. During quarantine, everything changed a lot, and so the normal rhythms of my apartment all stopped for a while. And then slowly over this fall, they've started to come back as everybody, even though COVID is still happening, everybody has kind of had to put their life back together again because you can't put it on hold forever. It's impossible. So the rhythms of my apartment are coming back, and they are much more annoying than I even knew that they ever were, because I knew they were annoying, but I wasn't here most of the time to find out how annoying they were. I was at work during the day, and then I would go out to do stand-up at night. So I was only here for a couple hours when I wasn't asleep. And I sleep like a fat lady, which is hard. I sleep very well. I've slept through a party. I sleep through animals. One of my roommate's dogs ate my bed, and I think I was taking a nap during part of it. I can sleep. So I'm sorry for those of you who have insomnia. I sleep well. I didn't notice most of what happens around my house during the day. And occasionally my roommates would be like, "Oh my God, the neighbor nanny is something else." And I would be like, "Huh." And I just didn't pay any attention to it. And then I found out above my room, only my room, no one else's room, directly above my room is the practice space for a local blues musician. And he is a very considerate man. He will probably never see this, but he's relatively considerate in that he uses a headphone system so that his stuff only makes a small acoustic noise. And so every day from 2 until 6 p.m., 4 fucking hours a day, I hear this like as he's like plucking things that are just making noise in the room. And then because he plays blues, he's a white guy, he plays the blues. He stomps his foot directly over my pillow in not exactly time for hours a day. It's very annoying. And yet, that is not the most annoying sound that happens in my apartment. The most annoying sound is the nanny who lives next door. I live in an old building that is cheap and many people live in here. We stuff too many people in so that we can afford it, even though it's already cheap. And most of the houses that are in this neighborhood are like that. And we used to have an empty lot next door, and then some enterprising, gentrifying, whatever. I know, I'm obviously a gentrifier also, but someone next door built like a $2 million fancy house out of nothing. And so there's this like, you know, rundown house with a hole in the roof, rundown house with a hole in the roof, house with a car in front of it that has not moved in 10 years. And then this like super swank house where like everything is blonde somehow, like everything is beige on this house. And it took them a while to build it. Somebody finally moved in, and then they hired this woman who sings to the children outdoors for 8 solid fucking hours a day, 6 days a week. She is, I'm sure, very nice. But we have this just like constant person right outside our windows being like, "Oh, kids, how are you doing?" Like, it's very insane. It sounds like someone is sitting on a small balloon over and over and over again. She has this weird, very, very high, like, that happens a lot. And it's just far enough away so that you can't understand what she's saying, and just close enough so that you cannot get away from it. So I just want to say that you could lock her in that courtyard.
They
and
actually
you do the world a favor.
Yeah, they actually told me at one point, like a week later, when I was still like hiding the reason for my bruises, that there was an opportunity for me to like take care of the kids in a different room in the building. And guess what? I would have my own courtyard. It was the same courtyard. Okay. I still haven't started working in it yet, but.
Well, if you need something to do with the courtyards of Harvard, I know they're there. Every university around town is a labyrinth. And if you need to know what to do with it, I got a lady you can lock in there. Okay, that was a lot, but thank you for listening to me complain about it, my neighbor. I've wanted to do that for months. Okay, our next performer, I'm super psyched to have her. She is somebody who has started doing stand-up around Boston. And I saw her a few times before the pandemic started, and she's been taking classes during the pandemic, and I'm super psyched to have her here because she's very charming and super funny, and you guys are going to love her. So please put your hands together for Becca Walensky.
Hey everyone. Thank you, Angela, for having me. Yeah, when I knew I was going to be on the show, Angela said there was a theme and that we didn't have to stick to it. But my theme was a time that I thought I was definitely going to save the world. And there's a story that I'd been wanting to tell for quite some time, but I think, I don't know, you guys can be the judge of this, if this story fits that theme. I don't know if I succeeded in saving the world, but I tried. I have wanted to tell the story of this really crazy sleepaway camp that I went to for a long time. So here it goes. Yeah, so for 7 years, I went to this ultra competitive sleepaway camp in Marble Falls, Texas, called Camp Champions. I grew up in Texas. And this camp said that they were non-denominational. But I've been reflecting, talking to my sister a lot lately. This camp was definitely Christian. They had a mission statement that was to turn campers into the champions that God intended them to be. Yeah. So, but I didn't realize, like, yeah. Okay, so the weird part is that this camp was attended exclusively by my Houston, Texas Jewish community. So very confusing. And I shit you not, you could only move up as a Houston Jewish youth in the Houston Jewish community in the social world during the school year if over the summer you went to Camp Champions. I'm still processing all this because it really doesn't make sense. But it's weird because there was a Jewish camp, but my mom and all these other Houston, Texas Jewish parents, they wanted to pay $3,000 so that we could reject our Jewish faith, like social status, I guess like reaping the benefits of capitalism. And they gave us these really great diet cherry limeades from Sonic. So I do appreciate those. But I'm just gonna give you like a comparison of the Jewish camp versus the maybe Christian non-denominational camp. So at Camp Shalom, the counselors, they didn't care if the girls snuck out at night to make out with boys. I mean, I wasn't doing this anyway. That would be many years from then, but at least it was like allowed there and you wouldn't get in trouble. At Camp Champions, there was a tree line of cabins, like called the tree line, that separated the boys' cabins from the girls. And if you crossed the tree line, they'd take you to camp headquarters and you have to confess or something. Yeah, so very different. Yeah, and at camp, well, I guess, okay, so I should mention now that Camp Champions had this weird thing where the counselors demanded that we call them sir and ma'am, but not in replace of their names. So not thank you, ma'am, but in addition to their names. So for example, my counselors like Mary Beth and Richard, I had to call them Mary Beth, ma'am, and Richard, sir, as their names. So that's, that's the camp that I went to. And I mean, at Camp Shalom, they had air conditioning in the cabins. And at Camp Champions, we had a tradition, this is real, called the camper sweat, where we had to this is real, where we had to sit under teepees to see who could go the longest without passing out. And this was Texas summer heat, okay? Yeah. I remember at Camp Shalom, Rachel Finkelstein told me that they went to Six Flags. At Camp Champions in 2005, there was this huge rainstorm, and on All Camp Fun Day, we got to paddle out in a water weenie and remove 2,000 pounds of debris from the lake. Forced labor, which is tons of fun. Chill. 3 days later, a kid died of amoebic meningitis. Yeah. Okay, but at least he died a champion. He was a champion. At least he died champion. Yeah. And the next year they built a pool, which was way too late for the kid, but it was really fun to swim in. So he was a good sacrifice for us. Yeah. So I've just been reflecting lately, and I guess I went to a Christian approaching concentration camp for Jews. I mean yeah. It didn't really matter that we were becoming Jews for Jesus. I mean, the camp just wasn't fun. But that didn't matter because at Camp Champions, there was this constant possibility of winning an award. Okay, this camp had an award for literally everything. There was the Eager Beaver Award for the camper who smiled the most, the Hinge Award for the camper who kept the other campers in line. There was a paper plate award. Actually, there were like a bunch of paper plate awards. I have no idea what those awards were for, but lots of paper plate awards. The campers were divided into age groups, minis, middies, and maxis. There was even an award for favorite maxi, favorite female menstrual product. I didn't realize this at the time, how strange this was. My sister and I were actually talking about this camp earlier today, and I was like, Jessica, did you ever get Eager Beaver? She was like, yeah, multiple times. I got Eager Beaver no times. So I didn't even know you could get it multiple times. And this huge thing that happened at this camp was torchlighter. And every night, one lucky camper would get to be torchlighter, which, I mean, it's like pretty Charlottesville. Yeah. Yeah, so now I like think of the tiki torches in Charlottesville. I mean, they basically want us to be the Jewish version of the Hitler Youth, is what it feels like now. And Torchlighter was very serious, but the selection process, there was all this mystery around what would it take to be Torchlighter. But I knew, because I'd been observing for many years, that you had to excel in athletics, you had to wear your hair in pigtail braids, and you had to cry to your counselor because you were homesick, but then like find God or something and overcome it. So there wasn't a lot of hope for me because I was so unathletic. I remember it took me 45 minutes to climb the easiest rock wall, and the camp average was 7. I like hung there crying near the top. My hair was, I mean, it's just like way too frizzy for good pigtail braids. And I remember watching all these other campers crying and sobbing myself to Stacy Ma'am, but like that bitch didn't buy it. She did not buy my sob story. I don't know, I guess like it was clear that I hated my family, which I do hate a lot of them. But yeah, I don't know, my plan wasn't really working. So I never got Torchlighter. I remember, yeah, Sarah Scheinberg got it 7 times in 3 years. But in 5 years, I got it 0 times. But this is where everything changes because my 3rd year, everything changed because of a hot dog suit. This is all real. So I bought this hot dog suit, Halloween costume for Halloween the previous year because I thought it would get boys to like me, which is a foolproof plan. But that didn't really work out so well. But I did get fucking Torchlighter instead. So I wore this hot dog suit for cabin inspection, and I didn't put the suit on like expecting to get Torchlighter. I had gotten second to last place in the lake swim like 5 years in a row. So Torchlighter was just not happening. But for whatever reason, the counselors lost their shit when they saw me in this hot dog suit. And that night, I wasn't wearing it at the time, but this hot dog lit a torch. Yeah, so it was pretty crazy. But here's the thing. So there are all these awards, and if you think that Torchlighter is the end all be all, no. The biggest award at camp, Spirit of the Torch. This is real. It's for the camper that exemplifies the true values of a champion, which I guess is like basically a white supremacist at this point. And that summer, somehow, I was nominated for Spirit of the Torch. And the other nominees were so pissed at me. I mean, they've been training for this their whole camp careers, and all I did was wear a hot dog suit. And on awards night, all of the nominees had to give this speech about why they were a true champion and deserved the award. But my speech was all about how I thought the awards were dumb and that the camp was teaching us to hate ourselves and hate each other and like buy into, I don't know, what I think today would be like capitalist conformity. I don't know what I said at the time. So I was like trying to expose the lies and use my nomination as a platform. But the speeches were actually after the voting. So, yeah. And so Rebecca Hanna-Walensky, was the 2006 Spirit of the Torch. And I found out actually that I'd won by a landslide. I got 60% of the votes. And my sister was actually campaigning for me, like underground. I didn't know this, but I don't know. I don't think that was the only reason why. Yeah, so like all the winners before me, after my name was called, the whole camp followed me down to the lake. And I remember people were glaring at me and I was like, I never even wanted this. And I was like picking my split ends. I was so like, I guess secretly maybe I wanted it, but I was trying to play it really cool. But people were pissed because I didn't deserve it. But I got into a canoe as the whole camp watched, and I lit the biggest torch you've ever seen. And this was like the craziest, like coolest thing at camp. And to this day, my name is carved into the 2006 Spirit of the Torch plaque under Camp Champions headquarters. And so just to finish really quickly, the next summer in 2000, I guess it was 2007, I came back to camp. And I guess the counselors thought that after I'd gotten this huge honor, I would be like the model camper. But I was ready to like take their asses down. I was gonna take down the camp champion dictatorship, make everybody realize how fucked up this camp. I mean, people were dying because of their negligence. And this is truth. This was actually the year that I got caught running around the camp naked, which I had been doing for the last 5 years. But I had just gotten caught this year, and I was singing a song I'd written. I got caught on the basketball court singing a song I'd written about my hairy vagina. I'm going to sing it for you right now, just a really quick line from it. This is This is very true. Hey there, your penis. What's, oh yeah, and I named my vagina King Kong. Well, people named it at Camp King Kong. Hey there, your penis. What's it like inside King Kong? You're 1,000 miles away, and girl, tonight you look so hairy. Yes, you do. King Kong will make your dreams come true. Oh, it's how you don't shave me. Oh, it's how you open free. Yeah. So that was my last day at Camp Champions. Not because camp ended, but because I was kicked out. But I like to imagine that 14 years later, campers are still whispering like around the campfire light about this hot dog suited girl who was like streaking through camp, singing about her hairy vagina. And that's my story, but I do just want to share my screen really quickly so I can show you a letter that I wrote my aunt to camp the summer that I got kicked out. So, can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
So first of all, on the right, you'll see the plaque. This is the plaque that I found. So there were 3 terms, and I was the second term, 2006 Spirit of the Torch. So that's the plaque. And then on the other side, you'll see a letter I wrote to my aunt, and it looks like I was 7, but I was 15. Dear Michelle, and Elise is my other aunt, and I crossed her name out. Dear Michelle, the counselors don't like me because I walk around naked and I curse too much and my boots do the hustle, because I was like doing this dance with my My vajayjay's name is King Kong. They got mad at that too. Otherwise, camp is fantastic. Hope you are well. Right back. Love, Becca. So that is the evidence that I have. This is a true story. Thank you, everybody.
Give it up for Becca Walensky. That's an amazing camp story. I think you should keep the name King Kong. It's a great one. That's a really good one.
I actually had on the back of my sweatshirt, a history teacher in high school was like, King Kong, 30 feet long. And I was like, okay. Anyway, yeah.
It's good.
Thanks.
I didn't ever go to camp, but I almost did. I got kicked out of art camp. My mom was a preschool art teacher, and yes, that's why I'm like this. And she really wanted me to go to a visual art summer camp. And I didn't care one way or another, didn't know anything about it. But she petitioned the camp. She found some camp where you were supposed to give them a portfolio of art that you made. And they would, if your art was good, they would let you in the camp. And she, on my behalf, I did not have a portfolio of any sort. I was like, I wasn't making any visual art. And I liked banging on the piano and like literally trying to like put the television up next to it to see if the wood would vibrate, like, and put my head on the other side. That was what I liked doing when I was like 9. And so she called up the director and told him that her daughter was an amazing visual artist and that they had to let me in this camp, and someone listened to her. And so I got sent off to this camp with no like knowledge of what was going on at all, and got there. And our first day, instead of taking us to like a place to sleep or eat, they drove a school bus of children straight into the middle of the woods and made everybody bring like sketch paper, and we were supposed to go out into the woods and draw logs. As you may remember from my earlier story about playground equipment, I don't care for logs much. So I did not want to do that. I had never wanted to draw a log. I don't even like trees. And I couldn't see where that would be a fun activity at all. And they're too hard to draw. Like, what, like my idea of a log was just like a couple lines, and they're like, there's a log, put a little circle on one end, you're done. So I was walking around, they gave me some paper and a pencil, and I was just walking around like, what are these people, like, why am I here? This isn't something I can do or know what to do. And there was one other kid who was just kind of wandering around, not doing anything. He was a couple years younger than me, so because of our age, I was like a head and a half taller than him. And he was like, I've got, let's just go somewhere else and not do this. And I was like, great idea. So we ended up just kind of like walking around, chit-chatting. and we were just wandering around, not doing anything special. And we eventually found our way back to the buses where we had all come in. And we were like, oh, well, let's just hang out here next to the bus and wait for everybody to get back. And I was like, I wonder if they'll want us to have a drawing. And he was like, nah, they won't. Who cares? It's not important. I was like, cool, great idea. So we just sat there and hung out. And it seemed to take forever. But we were just talking, not paying attention. And the sun started to go down. And I was like, I wonder what's going on. And then finally we heard sirens. And cop cars and fire truck cars were like pulling into the woods. And I was like, wow, something really important must have happened. I wonder what it was. And it turns out it was us. They thought that we had died. They thought that we were lost in the woods, and the camp counselors and everybody couldn't find us, and they didn't think to check the bus. So they just figured we drowned or fell off a cliff or a tree fell over on us. And they called the cops, and the entire state trooper set showed up en masse to do a hunt for us. And when we got when the counselor leading everybody finally came back with the 20 or so kids, to find us standing there at the bus, just being like, why are these police here? They were very pissed off. They were extremely angry. And so I was told that I would never be artsy at all, which is obviously very wrong. And that I would not ever be a creative person, and that I needed to grow up to be a stewardess or an accountant or some bullshit like that, and that I had no place in the world of fine art. And I was like, great. If fine art means sitting around drawing logs, I will be fine without it. And they sent me home and probably yelled at my mom, and that's fine. She deserved it. So we've learned a lot. Camp sucks, is my point. And I'm glad that I think you beat him, Becca, and you should have. You did the right thing. Always, never trust anyone who says they're non-denominational. It's never true. Okay, so I've got two more performers for you, and they're both really great. You're going to love it. I'm so excited. Our next performer, he runs a great comedy open mic on Mondays, and he's one of the best performers around Boston. And I really like him. He's so funny, and you guys are going to love him too. Please put it together right now for Sean Rosa.
Hi, thanks everybody. I have just a handful of short stories about a period of my life when I was younger. And what happened was my mom started working nights, waitressing at like a sports bar or a restaurant or something. And so that meant that at night, my dad would be the one to look after me and my brother. And I know that there's this trope in like sitcoms and popular culture of like, oh, when mom's away and dad's looking after the kids, it's gonna go insane, where it's just like, like as soon as like the mom like closes the door to the house and like walks to her car, the dad is already calling her like, honey, you have to come home. The little one's on fire, and the other two are communists. I know we're supposed to keep the Marxist literature cabinet locked, but if the kids want to find out that history is nothing more than a series of class struggles, they're gonna do it. They're gonna figure it out. But my dad, it's not that my dad was like, incompetent or anything. Like he was not well educated, but he was a smart guy. It was just more that, for the most part, my brother and I were real jerks of kids. And the first one, this first story is the story of the only time that my dad took us grocery shopping. And we go grocery shopping and everything's fine. He got everything on the list that my mom had left for him. Everything's like smooth sailing. We get out to the car, we're driving home. I'm in the front seat, and all of the groceries are in the seat, like in the floor on the seat in front of me. And so I start going through the groceries because I'm a little hungry, and I find a box of Lucky Charms, and so I open up the box of Lucky Charms, and I just dig my hand into it, my grubby little child hand into it, and I start eating marshmallows. I'm like, you know what? Forget you grains and nutrients. I want a mainline rainbows, you know? And so I'm just eating all of that, and I just as a greedy, awful child. But what happened was I was struck with a leprechaun's curse, and I ended up throwing up all over all of our groceries. And so I was just there, like, I was so embarrassed and just like crying. I'm like, it's still good, right? It's still good, isn't it? I didn't destroy our lives, right? Like, everything's like, and that was the only time my dad ever took us grocery shopping. Another time was one of the times that my dad would cook for us. Like, it was just like, I remember it must have been like winter time or something. Like, so my dad, you put him on a grill, you know, he is a dad, you know, you put him in front of a grill, he'll work wonders. But it was winter, so no grill. That's out of the question. You know, mom's probably not going to bring home pizza from whatever sports bar she's working at. So my dad decides to make burgers on the stove, like, and you put my dad, like I said, in front of a grill, he'll whip you up a real good burger. I don't know what this thing was that he created for us. It was like a burger, like basketball. It was so just round, and it was just like, I don't know, like, no, I remember just like, it was on white bread as well, just like no cheese, no ketchup, no nothing. Just, I remember just, we put it in. So the thing about it is, it was completely round, but the inside was hollow. So as soon as I chomped into it, all of the grease was pooled in the middle, and it rushed straight into my mouth and burned everything in my mouth. And I don't want to be rude, so I didn't like cry out in the pain that I was in. And my dad had the audacity to ask, "How is it?" Like, it's delicious, Dad. I've never had a burger like it. And you know, that was one of the times that my dad cooked for me. And here's a final short story. It's so, like what Angela was saying with like the playgrounds and stuff, like how it's much better like developed and designed now. You know, not to sound like old and curmudgeonly, like, you know, back in my day, but like, you know, all that. But as somebody who was a child of the 90s, we didn't have like, you know, smartphones or like really, you know, these cool video game systems. What we did was we would go outside and find the most dangerous thing we could get our hands on, and to play with that for a half an hour or until someone died. And I'm not saying that's the right way to go. I'm just saying that was what we did. And on this day, I happened to find a loose golf club. Just one golf club, not like of a set of golf clubs. I don't know why we had it. Nobody in our family played golf. It was just one golf club. And so I got, you know, my hands on that, and I was just whacking it around, like, I don't know, trying to like cut tall grass with it or whatever, just being a dumb child. And so I reared back and I swung it, and at that moment my brother walked into my shot, and I hit him with the golf club right here.
Oh.
And he screamed and grabbed his eye, and blood is just gushing out of his face. And my dad comes running out like, oh my God, what are we, like, oh, and then like we go to the emergency room, and my brother has to get stitched up, and I'm just like mortified. And I'm like, just like, I'm beside myself. I can't believe what just happened. I might have just blinded my brother, all that stuff. My dad comes up to me. I'm like in the waiting room, just inconsolable. And my dad, he just puts his arm around me and he's like, what are you doing, man? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, I'm sorry, that I was very irresponsible of me. I feel really awful right now. He's like, yeah, that was a putter. Like, what? That's what you like? Oh, I'm sorry. I almost blinded my brother, but thanks for giving me pointers on my short game, Dad. If my brother was laying in front of me, I could have used it, but like I really should have reared back with the driver and really, really set my brother's head clear across the fairway. I was actually talking with my mom about this story earlier, and she reminded me of a detail that I didn't know, which was they were trying to get a hold of her at her job, and when she didn't get a call or anything about it at work, and she comes home to see that like nobody's home, and she's like, okay, what's going on? She finds out that we're at the hospital and what happened, and she comes and she talks to the doctor, and she's like, okay, all right, he should be fine. We stitched him up, we gave him amoxicillin, and he should be good. And then my mom was like, what? You gave him amoxicillin? He's allergic to amoxicillin. And my dad is like, wait, what? Like, my mom was like, he's allergic to amoxicillin, right? He's like, how would I know that? Like, and so they had to pump my brother's stomach because my dad did not know that he was allergic to amoxicillin. Yeah, so I don't know, maybe I don't want to say that I don't want to be an advocate for traditional gender roles or anything, but maybe sometimes some things have been figured out better than what I know. I don't know. I wish that there was a moral to these set of stories, but there isn't. So, yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, for Sean Rosa. Sean, what do you think your brother is doing right now?
Oh, he's probably watching wrestling or something.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad that it all worked out.
Yeah, he's fine.
Good.
Yeah,
He's gonna pop up in the Zoom screen.
I was actually talking with my brother and my mom earlier today, and my brother actually was like, we still have that putter in the garage, I was like, oh no.
I can definitely relate to the fact that when you are a kid, 90% of your time is spent looking for weapons.
Yep.
And then just finding out what happens when you throw them around.
Yeah.
And I can also, it is important that siblings injure one another. I had a stepbrother. I didn't have him the whole time, but I had him for a little while when I was a kid. And I am very bad at all athletic things. So, and he was very good at it. So one day he got frustrated and he was like, I'm going to teach you how to catch a ball. Everyone should be able to do this. It's very basic. It's not that hard. I'm going to teach you how to do it. That's what we're going to do today. And I was like, you shouldn't. And he was like, that's what we're going to do today. And I was like, okay, fine. So we went out in the backyard and he threw a bunch of balls and I did nothing. And finally he got so frustrated that he gave me a baseball mitt, which I had never held. And he was like, he kept putting my arm in different places. But then by the time he got back to the other side of the yard in order to throw the ball, my arm would get tired and it would just kind of be down here somewhere. And I didn't catch a ball all day. So finally he was like, God damn it, You have to hold your arm still. And he set it up for me for the millionth time. And he was like, don't move your arm. Put it right there, right there. Do not move it. Set it right there. Hold it there. And he's backing up and backing up. He throws the ball and it came and it hit me right in the forehead. And I didn't have to go to the hospital, which was nice, but I did have a really cool baseball thread mark on my forehead for several days, which made me extremely popular at junior high. Okay, I've got one final performer for you, and I'm so psyched to have her here. She does stand up basically all around the country, all over the place. She's super funny, and it's a big win for me just to have her come and talk to you today. And I think you're going to adore her from the get-go. So please put your hands together right now for Carolyn Plummer.
Woo! Everybody. So I kind of loosely based my story on the theme of what you did before, because I've been doing comedy for a very long time, and people inevitably ask me, how did you get into comedy? And there are a million reasons why, but the least of which is I'm the youngest of 3 children, and my dad is a minister, which speaks volumes about why I went into comedy, but that's just scratching the surface. As a child, I did a ton of theater, mostly in the summer. We had a summer theater program. I grew up in a resort town, so it was the summer theater, and it was run by my first grade teacher. And you have to know, my first grade teacher, it was the 70s. So she was someone who thought outside of the box before you were supposed to think outside of the box. We had 15 reading groups in my first grade class, and the principal came to her and said, Mrs. Erickson, you can't have 15 reading groups. And she said, well, they're on 15 different levels, so what do you suggest that I do? So we continued to have 15 reading groups. This woman was great. So she ran the summer theater. She had a big 3rd-story house, and I was friends with her granddaughter who had come up from the summer. And it was this big Victorian house on the hill, and the 3rd floor was all costumes. So we spent many days just dressing up in costumes in her house, and she was just a special lady. As she got older, she got dementia, and she ran away from the nursing home. If that tells you anything about who this woman was, she was awesome. So anyway, I did a lot of theater, and when I was younger, I was a tomboy. So I started out, I was a Winky and a Munchkin in The Wizard of Oz. And to play The Wizard of Oz, the Winkies are yellow and the Munchkins are blue. So we had to wear makeup, but by the end of the week-long summer theater, I was green because I was stained from the makeup. So that was my first play that I was in. Then I did plays in school. I was a workhouse boy in Oliver. I was, then I got boobs. So then I was in The Music Man, and I played Marilyn's mom, or Marilyn, Madeline, the librarian's mom anyway. And I was supposed to be knitting in one of the scenes and not paying attention to what was going on the stage, and they forgot my knitting. So I picked all the leaves off the plant that was on the porch that I was sitting on. And I actually ended up killing the plant. So I was improvising, because that's what you have to do, right? So then I was in The Velveteen Rabbit, and I played the nanny. That was probably one of my favorite parts to play, because I had a solo and I had a big part, and she was kind of a bitch, but I liked playing a bitch. I enjoyed that. And then what else was I in? Oh, I got poison ivy in my eyes one year because my dog ran through poison ivy. I scratched my eyes, and my eyes puffed up, and I was a genie in Aladdin, and we had black makeup or white makeup with black eyes, and the lady would not touch my face. So I just had swollen eyes and played the genie that way. And then another time, I forget what else I was in. I was in a ton of plays anyway. I was in Two Crooks and a Lady, which is a play from like the 20s. And the whole premise of the play is this woman's in a wheelchair and she can't move. And she has her maid set her head a certain way every morning, and you don't know why. And it turns out so she can see in the mirror and see what's going on behind her. That's the whole, I didn't mean to give the play away for you, but I just did. So I was in that and I couldn't move, and I was in an old-fashioned wheelchair, and the girl playing the maid wheeled me out and slammed my leg into the coffee table on set, so I couldn't move or react. I got a huge bruise from it. So that was fun. And then my favorite performance, or not my favorite, but one, I was in The Prince and the Pauper, and they had put up stuff so you could see the edge of the stage. It glowed in the dark, so when the set was dark you could walk out and go down the steps. And this scene, we were in a workhouse, so we were down we're supposed to be like poor people in the workhouse, and between the stairs and the edge of the stage. So 10-year-old Carolyn walked to the edge of the stage thinking the stairs were there, and just stepped off the apron of the stage about 6 feet and landed on my ankle, and I thought I broke my leg. So we're supposed to be upset in the workhouse or whatever, and I was crying because I thought I broke my ankle. So people were just amazed at my acting ability, that I could just cry on demand, and it was because I hurt myself. They probably heard swearing in the dark too, but so that's why I got into comedy. Like, people always ask me that, and it's just, I mean, doing a play is totally different. You're interpreting someone else's words. There's someone else's words. But what I liked was getting the laugh and getting the attention, which I wasn't craving attention. I got plenty of negative attention when I got in trouble at Sunday school, but it was just different, and I enjoyed it. And I think that's why later on in life, I started doing comedy. And the other reason I got into comedy is I watched Saturday Night Live, SCTV, The Carol Burnett Show. I loved all of those shows and the characters that they played. And I didn't have a lot of confidence when I was younger, but I drank a lot. So I would get drunk and I would play these characters at parties. Like, people would be like, I loved Chris Farley and Tommy Boy, and I would be drunk at parties and I'd be quoting the movie and like moving around and like falling on coffee tables, and it was just fun. And that's another reason I got into comedy. And when people don't know you in life, or when people see you in life, like, I have a day job. I'm glad I have a day job now, but it's been my nemesis for many years that I can't just do comedy and pay the bills. But now with COVID, I'm glad that I have a day job, but I don't love my day job. I used to work with a sales rep who didn't send his own emails, which means I could be replaced by software. You could just speak into a computer. But, I did this guy's emails, and he was a pompous ass. He's never going to see this because he doesn't know how to turn on the computer, but he was a total dick, right? Total misogynistic, like, asshole, from like a throwback to Mad TV. Like, this guy was a total fucking prick. And I had to sit with him every day. And me being a comedian, not be able to, zing him back or whatever. And I worked with this guy for years. And I'll tell you, and this doesn't have to do with anything, but this is a funny story. He came in one day and he said, I need you to FedEx this, but I need you to fill out the form that goes with it. Because that's how he talked to me, because, he's polite. And so he brings it over to me, and I look at it, and it's like a card with little... It's a card with like little stains on it. And I don't really look at it. And then I look at the form. First question is, when was the date and time of your last stool sample? And I went, are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? So I was livid. I was like, this is it. You crossed the line when you brought in your poop card and asked me to FedEx it. I said, I'm not fucking doing this. So I went to, we didn't have an HR. I still work for the same company, but I don't work with him anymore. He retired, but so we didn't have an HR department. So I was just like, fuck no, I'm not doing this. And then I was just like, I'm not doing this. And he had to get someone else to do it. But I just remember I was like, are you kidding? Who has the balls to ask someone to do that? Number one. And number two, who wants anybody to know that they're sending a stool sample to someone? Like, what an idiot. And then he would have his medical files sent to work. Like, he was going through this thing where he had a rash on his arm and he couldn't get rid of it. And I was like, just drink more water and put some lotion on. And he had me order Lady Cream from Avon. he goes, I use this. I go, that's lady overnight cream. He goes, well, that's what I like. I'm like, okay, let me order your Avon for you, you stupid fuck. So he had this rash going on. He was going to a dermatologist. So he had his medical records sent to the office. And one of the things in his medical records, again, there's HIPAA laws. He's never going to see this. I didn't tell you his name. You don't know who I'm talking about. I'm reading his medical records because they're there. Because why not, right? You sent him to work. I'm going to read them. And like back in the 90s, he had scabies. I was like, ew. Like, first of all, who gets scabies anymore? And second of all, now I know about it. So now I have to sit across from you and take dictation and try not to go, so how did you get the scabies? You know, and then there was one other incident with him, and I got way off track. This story has totally changed direction, but he used to take pictures. I work in sales, and he used to take pictures of displays, and then we'd send them to the buyers to see that the display was set up or whatever. So he hands me his phone. He got an iPhone on April Fool's Day, and I had to call our IT department, and they didn't believe me. That's how bad this guy was with computers. They thought I was pranking them. So he hands me his iPhone, and I have to send the pictures to the email because he doesn't know how to do it, and then send them to the buyer. So he hands me his phone. I'm flipping through trying to find the right pictures. Naked pictures of him and his girlfriend on his phone. So now the guy who had scabies in the 90s, I've now seen him naked and his girlfriend naked. So I brought it up at a company outing. And I just said at lunch, I said, hey, Rich, next time, why don't you put your pictures in a folder that are personal? And then, you know, I don't have to see you naked. And everybody was shocked. Nothing happened, but everybody was shocked. So anyway, that's why I do comedy, because things happen and you have to, the way my brain is wired now, I have to put them out there for other people to experience, because no one ever believes me. I used to try to do a joke about the poop thing and no one believed me. They're like, oh, he would have been sued. You know, that's crossing the line. I'm like, you've never worked for a family-owned company with no HR department. I'm like, that guy could have shit on the floor in the office and he'd still have a job. You know, like, people don't understand it. So I don't know. It's in my DNA. I think my dad was a minister and he used to pull pranks on the pulpit just for me that people wouldn't see. And then they wouldn't believe me because he'd wink at me or like do something. And then I'd be like, he just winked and I'm laughing in church. I'm like, you can't laugh in church. And I was like, but no, he didn't. So, I mean, I think comedy is what I'm supposed to do. I had another story prepared, but I had to get permission from my friend and she denied me permission. So maybe if she gives me permission at a later date, I can share that story. Because it's really funny. But it's just funny, like the way we go through life. Like, I definitely don't feel like a grown-up sometimes. And I also think that kids don't see me as a grown-up. And I know this is a fact because I went over to a friend's house. She had people over by the bonfire because you do everything outside now because of COVID. And her friend brought her 4-year-old daughter. And we're all sitting there and her 4-year-old daughter was pointing at me and she was whispering to her mom so I couldn't hear her. And her mom said, what? And she said, is that girl grown up? And she all grown up? And she goes, what are you asking me? And she goes, is she grown up? And she goes, is she a grown up? And she said, yeah. She goes, she's a grown up. Is that what you're asking me? She goes, I didn't think she was all grown up. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I don't want to change that about myself. So I hope comedy comes back soon because I've been alone a lot and I'm getting weird. And I actually have 2 shows this weekend. I'm booked both days, which hasn't happened since March. So I'm pretty excited about that. I forgot the point that I started with. I smoked a lot of pot back in the day. So that's the other reason I have a couple brain cells and they don't always work together. So I'm a little... I was also going to talk about my drinking stories from back in the day when I was in college, but that would take way too long. So we won't get into that. But thanks for having me. Sorry I was a little all over the place. I had something else mapped out in my head, but I went off on a tangent about my old coworker.
That's okay. So. That's why we're here. If your friend gives you permission to talk about whatever that was, please let me know.
I will let you
And
know.
please come back and tell a drinking story.
Oh, I will, for sure.
We can have a drinking edition at some point.
There's a
where
lot of them.
That sounds great. You can have, if you want, we'll just have you do drinking stories for the whole show. That seems perfectly lovely. You guys, we did it. That's our show. This was a really, really fun one. You guys were all so great. I feel like I know you all better, which was the whole point, is so that I feel like I had friends. And but you guys told amazing stories. This was really, really cool. So thank you very, very much. If you're watching, the Comedy Studio has shows, some of which are more organized than this one, but I don't think we needed any of it. And it's pretty much every night of the week. So all you have to do is go to their webpage, which is thecomedystudio.com/broadcast. You can watch whatever they have on that night. They have stand-up, especially on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But Kathy Ferris has a great show on Tuesdays, and there's a variety show, all that kind of stuff. So check them out. They're lovely and amazing, and I'm thrilled that they have us come and just be weird in front of you. So thank you. This was fantastic. Once again, thank you for coming to Tales from the Inside.
Thank you. I like that your cat's just chilling.
Yeah. That's Hercules.
Ooh, pizza's here.